Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and boy I love talking about Palworld, especially when it comes to the controversies. Now I made a video where I talked about the many controversies, where we touched upon topics of plagiarism, potential artificial intelligence being used into the game, and of course the history of the actual company Pocket Pair and their various other video games, and how close they are to some of Nintendo's IPs. But today, there is just more and more controversy on top of it, whether it be from the community and whether it be potential legal action that they might be looking at. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I assume by this point, all of you have probably understood that Pokemon has responded. They've got an actual acknowledgement from the Pokemon Company. So here it is, Pokemon Company. They have a Japanese post here made on the 25th of January. So again, literally a couple days ago here at this point. But the English translation, inquiries regarding other companies' games. We have received many inquiries regarding another company's game released in January 2024. I think we all know what they're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. They may not mention it by name, but this is an actual response they have to make because there are so many ass-mad babies, I have to imagine, that they were sending inquiries to Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, their legal department, telling them, "Dad, somebody's copying you on the streets." And Pokemon Company's like, yeah, we heard it. We heard the thousands of emails. Stop emailing us. We get it. We have not granted any permission for the use of Pokemon intellectual property or assets in that game. We intend to investigate and take appropriate measures to address any acts that infringe on intellectual property rights relating to Pokemon. We will continue to cherish and nurture each and every Pokemon in its world and work to bring the world together through Pokemon in the future. Kind of a weird way to end things on, but ladies and gentlemen, clearly this is a company that, as you all know, very litigious. You know, if a starving child in Angola, Zaire decided, you know what, before I die, I'm going to make a Pokemon game set in my country. And they'll fuddle around with a little ROM hacker here and there, and before they even create their first Fakemon, Nintendo's legal department will already sue that motherfucker straight out of the straight into the stratosphere, okay? That's how it works. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Palworld has been announced like 2 years ago, and a lot of the designs they showcased in their game existed 2 years ago. And a lot of those designs made it to the final release millions of players are playing. Did Nintendo threaten litigation then? Clearly not. Which is why I believe firmly that they're not going to chase any litigation right now. Obviously, any company is going to investigate if there are potentially stolen assets. So this is where I wanted to sit down and kind of really see if maybe they had a case. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a lawyer, okay? I'm just a guy with too much time on the internet looking into things that interest me. But I have dealt with enough copyright law on YouTube, I have dealt with enough watching over myself in a fair use manner, that in some cases, I think I have more to offer than the average Andy speaking about the situation. If you're a YouTuber, you understand fair use and copyright laws, you should at least understand them sufficiently enough. I know that not everyone does, but in this situation, you kinda have to. And the thing with copyright law is it's complicated, okay? In fact, lawyers that study copyright law will tell you that it is one of the most confusing minefields. The only piece of law that is more confusing than copyright law, in my opinion, is the Internal Revenue Code, okay? The IRC. That, in of itself, is an entire fucking other dimension of law. But that's me getting off track. Now, Nintendo has started to fire off lawsuits over this situation. Now, this is a channel known as Toasted Shoes, who wrote, "I modded actual Pokemon into Palworld." So let's watch this video. Uh-oh! Bum 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 bum! The video contains content from Nintendo, who has blocked it on copyright grounds. Now, obviously, I'm not going to show you what this video is, because I don't want the Nintendo Ninja... Sometimes you gotta look for the sniper laser pointing at your forehead. I don't want the Nintendo ninjas, the Nintendo assassins, John Wick to show up at my house. But to give you a quick idea, it was Palworld the game, but except replace the main character with Ash Ketchum and all the pals with actual Pokemon models, okay? Now, whether you look at ROM hacks or fan games, Nintendo gets very litigious, okay? Very litigious. You have probably seen how many cease and desists exist, even for Pokemon games that are entirely created through user assets, meaning no actual game asset was downloaded and used in a product. Even with Pokemon, even with their trademark being used, Nintendo will jump in and shut down and cease and desist fan projects. Now, there's been some misinformation about Toasted Shoes and the people behind this. I've seen some reports online of them apparently using 3DS assets and porting it over to the actual mod, which I don't see any proof of. In fact, all of Nintendo's legal work against him has pretty much been DMCAing his video off of YouTube and Twitter. Now again, if Toasted Shoes decides to stick his shoe more into the Nintendo shitheel, the Nintendo doo-doo pile, then I actually can imagine Nintendo would come after him with a serious actual lawsuit, which is why if you're an independent developer, if you're a content creator, Nintendo these are the last toes you ever want to step on legally. Nintendo has been in a lot of actual cases over the years. One of the more largest ones, one of the more iconic ones, was back in 1983 when they were going up against Universal City Studios. Why? Because of King Kong and Donkey Kong. And this was actually one of the sweetest wins for Nintendo, where at the time, the actual judge had argued Universal acted in bad faith by threatening Nintendo's licensees and that it had no right over the name King Kong or the characters or the stories. He further held that there were no possibilities for consumers to confuse Nintendo's game and characters with King Kong. Donkey Kong is one character, King Kong is another, and Nintendo's lawyers made sure to make that an actual apparent fact. Nintendo actually gets so insane, rightfully so in this case, when they went up against Blockbuster Entertainment Corporation. You know why they went up against Blockbuster? It wasn't necessarily because of them renting out their video games and possibly biting into the sales quota of Nintendo titles, but it was when the actual company over here started to photocopy their game manuals. Remember back in the day when video games came with those booklets that explained how the game worked before all of that was removed into PDF files that you would watch on the internet? Yeah, all that would happen back then is Blockbuster, if you actually happen to have a video game manual lost, what they would do is photocopy the manuals for replacement purposes. Basically, Nintendo of America sent a letter of request to Blockbuster telling them, bitch, you better stop photocopying, okay? You better stop redistributing our copyrighted game manuals, which is absolutely true. You can't be doing that. It's like copywriting or it's like copying a book and starting to sell it. The actual instruction manual is a book in a way. It's a piece of copyrighted material. To sit down and redistribute that and charge a fee is an absolute no-no. So again, Nintendo's got a whole bunch of lawyers about the situation, but when it comes to the actual games, what we're looking at are trademarks. Now, Nintendo has a lot of trademarks. Obviously, they've got trademarks for their games like Pokemon Red, Pokemon Green, Blue, Yellow, Black, Brown, White, Gray, Scarlet, Purple, Crimson, and of course, even different variations of how these games are written in different stylistic ways. But beyond just trademarking the game names, obviously, even Pokemon are trademarked. For instance, Pikachu has a full trademark, as does Eevee. Why do these Pokemon have trademark? Well, because these are actually used for a lot of things. A, for the video games, also for things like merchandising. If you ever have your character merchandised, you're going to have trademarks for it. Now, Pikachu, in this case, is the most iconic trademark. I would say Pikachu is more important than even the Pokemon trademark. You want to know why? Because if you go up to somebody like my mom, who doesn't know jack shit about Pokemon, she knows what a Pikachu looks like. In fact, I would say most people in the world could recognize Pikachu like they recognize Mickey Mouse. Even if you don't have any idea what a Pokemon is, you've seen Pikachu represented in many pieces of media. You've seen it iconically enough everywhere. So for a trademark to exist, obviously Nintendo is going to put it out there, and trademarks, from my understanding, have to be protected. Basically, any company, and it's not just Nintendo, will fight tooth and nail to protect their trademarks. If they don't do it, then it kind of creates an image where every other big company, or any company really, can jump in and start using their product. Okay, so let's whittle this back, all right? I've been going off on a few tangents, going over some of Nintendo's history. Why does this tie back to Palworld of all things and the controversy surrounding it? So obviously Nintendo is investigating for any forms of copyright infringement. Now, I've seen a few people say that Palworld could be a parody, and I don't really see any of that. To give you an idea of what a parody is, I would say Grand Theft Auto is a parody in of itself. It's a parody of modern-day United States, and it's a parody that consists of various well-known brands satirized into an open world. This is a portion from the GTA 5 gameplay trailer, which contains one line that you should burrow into your heads when we're talking about things like parody.
A sprawling, satirical reimagining of modern Southern California.
So here they've actually straight up mentioned that we are creating a modern, realistic representation satirical of Southern California, which includes the city of Los Angeles, obviously satirized as Los Santos, and many iconic landmarks, right? Like if you play GTA 5, you'll recognize pretty much shot-for-shot locations that, again, are reflected in the city of Los Angeles. So that famous Hollywood sign, which I can't show you because I'm gonna get fucking copyright struck if I show you that sign, Vinewood exists as a satirical representation. You want to go down Sunset Boulevard? Well, Rockstar has their own version of that. Beverly Hills? Scratch that, dog. We call it Rockford Hills. And again, these are just satirical representations of a real-world location. But with Grand Theft Auto's case, one thing that looks very similar are their cars. Now, if you ever play GTA 5 or any Grand Theft Auto game, you'll notice that their cars represent roughly a real-world vehicle. So they'll have their versions of a Lamborghini, they'll have their versions of a Ferrari, Honda, so on and so forth. One example I'll mention is the Raiden. Now this car over here is obviously, if you know anything about vehicles, looks to represent a Tesla Model S. Now this is a vehicle that I'm sure if you sat down in a courtroom, you might be able to say that, yeah, they probably aped the design of a real Tesla right here. But again, this is a parody representation. In fact, a lot of the cars that Grand Theft Auto has that they're parodying oftentimes take aspects from multiple vehicles and sort of conglomerate them into one thing. You know, if you look at a Lamborghini in GTA 5 very closely, it doesn't exactly match a real represented version of a real Lamborghini. It may take elements of a Lamborghini from the front, it may take elements from a Pagani from the back, a Ferrari somewhere else, until it eventually becomes its own vehicle. And then you get into something interesting regarding fair use, which is exactly where this story is kind of going to for me. Now, for Pokemon Company to actually go after these guys and potentially think of investigating and protecting their suits, if Palworld is not a parody, which it doesn't really indicate anywhere that it is a parody of the Pokemon franchise. In fact, the way that it gets away, from my understanding, in regards to trademark laws, is instead of obviously using the term Pokemon, it uses Palworld, its own distinctive name. Instead of using the trademarks of actual Pokemon, it uses different names. In fact, the designs are different enough that they're obviously not aping actual trademark Pokemon. At no point in all of the 100 and I think 10 PALs do you find something that resembles shot for shot a Pikachu. Even if you took a Pikachu and just changed its color around, like you made a red Pikachu, you would still be violating Nintendo trademarks. And Nintendo, being as litigious as they are, I can bet you within 24 hours of this game's release, if they found a model that they knew was actually aped from their own trademarks, this game would have been shut down. The fact that it hasn't shows me that obviously Nintendo doesn't really have a case and they're not willing to go pursue this. Remember, Nintendo does not care about the public perception. They already outsell this game like, what, 5-1? They don't care about its impact on them. However, what they do care about is if something is aped from them, trademark, maybe a model is ripped, they will shut you down. And again, they have the legal right to do so. So obviously fair use. Now fair use has 4 actual determining factors. So one of them is the purpose and character of your use, then it's the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion taken, and the effect of the use upon the potential market. So in this situation, I want to go over all 4 of them really quickly, just to give you a quick idea of at least my understanding of what arguments work for Palworld and what arguments actually Nintendo could use to their advantage. Now again, I'm not a lawyer, so please feel free to correct me if you do have legal background on copyright law. So when it comes to the purpose and character of the use, Courts are going to, in my opinion, my understanding, favor actual transformative design. And I will say Palworld has enough transformation to warrant a unique product. It's not exact one-to-one reproductions. In fact, nothing in Palworld, from my analysis, is a one-to-one copy. Yes, there are heavy inspirations, but even if you're looking at like the GTA example that I have, I'm sure many car manufacturers could take Rockstar to court if they feel that, yes, their designs are getting aped. But I believe Rockstar, like Palworld, does enough transformation so that the product becomes its own unique thing, and this aspect of fair use couldn't be challenged in court. Now, the other thing is the nature of the copyrighted work. And this is where I think Nintendo genuinely has a chance, because from my understanding, when it comes to creative works, creative copyrighted works, especially designs, courts tend to actually, in my opinion, put greater protection towards actual artistic designs. And that might be the only boon Nintendo has. The rest of these 2 points can be honestly a toss-up. So, for instance, the amount and substantiality of that portion that is taken. Now, to understand, because Palworld has like Pokemon that look similar, it's like the GTA example I gave earlier. When you use portions of like copyrighted works, it could be a situation where you're actually infringing on the copyright of each of these works, but then it becomes a situation as, hey, you're using an eighth of these products, so are you really aping these products? Or maybe it's not infringing in general because you've used little tiny bits of everything from multiple different people to create this one giant product. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I think this could still be argued in the favor of Nintendo, but as it stands right now, I think Palworld has the winning home field advantage. Now, when it comes to the final thing, the effect of the use upon the market, this one I actually believe Palworld has in its court. To understand, Pokemon games are designed to be family-friendly in nature. Palworld is a game with obvious violence. You've got assault rifles, pistols. The actual market that this game is catering to is not in the same field that Pokemon is. So the effect that it has on the marketplace can honestly be argued. And given the sales figures of a Pokemon game, I don't think they're actually hurting. Obviously, if these people are directly stealing or directly impacting the, market that Nintendo has, maybe that case could be made. But you could also just say that maybe people choose to buy this game because it's cheaper and it appears to have far more quality put into it than whatever Game Freak is pulling out. One of the other interesting lawsuits that I found in this situation was one known as Tetris Holdings LLC versus Zio Interactive. So this is a situation where, I actually had found out just now that gameplay can't be copyrighted. However, in this situation, I found something known as the squinting test. So basically, the judge in this situation, Judge Wolfson, actually had said, right in this situation, that while the gameplay of Tetris is not copyrightable, all right, if you scroll all the way down over here, Wolfson explained that the court should compare the games as they would appear to a layman by concentrating upon the gross features rather than an examination of minutiae. Essentially, comparing the game's respective look and feel, Wolfson further wrote, if one has to squint to find distinctions only at a granular level, then the works are likely to be substantially similar. Now, maybe Nintendo could look at this and say, if you squint, maybe the models, if you have to squint to find differences between certain models of official Pokemon and PALs, maybe that case could be made. Again, at the end of the day, I'm only looking at this from the United States perspective of copyright law. I haven't even touched upon Japanese interpretation of copyright laws or whatever their fair use equivalent, if they even have that, exists. So yeah, is Palworld at risk of Pokemon? Honestly, it is so complicated that we could honestly dive. I would love to see this lawsuit. I really would. Just because it would be such an interesting toss-up to see who would win. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, what it comes down to is the controversy surrounding this game has caused so much hoopla that we are literally reporting an independent developer to a multi-billion-dollar company trying to protect this multi-billion-dollar company, when in reality, Palworld has proven that Game Freak should just, or the Pokemon company should get out of their ass and actually create a substantial product if they want to maintain their dominance to the world in the pocket monster collecting genre. That's really all it comes down to. If it's one thing Palworld did, in amongst all of its mashing up, is that at least it brought people together to at least question why Nintendo can't even provide a quarter of this game's value. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.